So I can kind of bring everyone up to speed for where we're at. Of the 3 workshops that we had, that we invited everybody to, the first one, no one came, but the second 2 were reasonably well attended. Right now, we've got about 15 fishermen and harvesters on our list of people that have contributed to what's on the maps. This one was filled in first, and that one we started as a second map just because we didn't want this first one to get too cluttery. But you can see on the first map, we've got red for lobstering, yellow for scalloping, green is rockweed harvesting. We had some rockweed harvesters show up to add their data, and purple is mostly on that one. David worked very hard to get the shellfish areas mapped in on that. And then there's additional, you can see some lobster trawl lines on there. Besides the people that came to the meetings, we've kind of branched out and gone to try and track down individuals that we know work in certain areas. I talked to Henry Barnes and Colby Barnes and filled in a little more on the scalloping and the lobstering over there. Martin Ramsey stopped by while I was talking to them and had the map spread out, and he checked it out and said he felt like his areas were covered. Sammy she has a full map, and she was gonna bring that out at Whiddon's Wharf so that we could get Tom Cloutier and Tristan and anyone else down that way that wanted to add to it. And then, did you bring one to the fish? Do you have any additional data for us? Did you get anybody to sign the map, or?
No.
How about the Coombs?
But we have the smaller maps that people.
Right. Did Herman or Jocelyn get to add anything to those?
No, but they're gonna be doing it.
Okay,
Yep.
all right.
I'll be pestering them. I'll be pestering them.
Okay. And then I'm also going to go after Jim Barkley and Josh and Zachary Kay to get them to add also. I feel like that'll fill in a lot. I wish we could get the bridge coffins to put stuff on there, but I don't know them enough to go find them. They go past me, but if anybody knows a way to reach out to them and wants to invite them to add stuff, I know they have stuff up inside, so fill in some of that.
Buddy, you might get Bill to cooperate.
Do we have any small packets ready to go now? Because I do know that Jim Baldwin is having,
I'm headed to Cook's, and I actually have some maps in the car and pens. I was going to be totally ruthless and hit people up down there, so,
yeah, get them on the,
yeah,
before they drink too much.
yep. Headed straight there from here. And then, yep, she had some at the Maine Coast Fishermen's Association. We're going to get the Coombses on that, and if anybody's got any other thoughts on people we can track down, I've already started digitizing the maps. I've already scanned chunks of that, and I'm starting to create the shape files, and I can just keep adding to them as if more stuff gets filled in. I'd rather not have us write anymore on that particular map, because that one's scanned, and I don't want to have to go back through and rescan it, but we can add to that one, or we still have blank ones. So plenty of room to add more stuff if we want to.
There were some black markings too that someone did. What was the black? That was.
It wasn't actually black, it's actually the outline of, there's a fat outline of the land masses in Harpswell. So some of the islands look like they're just a black squiggle, but it's just the outline of it. It was the way the shapefile came through.
Maybe right there.
No,
Yeah.
on that one, so there was. Just want to make sure you get it. It's Andy marked a bunch of stuff. Oh, there's stuff in here. So you got all that. That's purple. That was.
Yeah, purple's oysters, or.
Oysters or shellfish.
Yep, shellfish, yep.
He did a lot of good detail in there.
Yep, this one was great. I mean, Chris
there.
gave us a really good start filling it in. He did a great example, which was super helpful. And then we have like this whole area, basically, everybody's like, everyone fishes through here. So that's why there's just giant hash marks across it. And I think what we'll do in our final version is literally do hash marks across it and just say this is an incredibly dense fishing area. Do not recommend extra stuff in here at all.
I just recommend maybe dropping it off down at Angie's and down at Bumgarner's, Wharf, Glenn's Lobster. I mean, specifically to the west side of that high zone area, the shoal bottom.
Yep.
That's gonna be.
Sean actually marked some of
primarily-
that. Sean was there. He marked
Yeah.
some of that.
A lot of that's gonna be primarily your older fishermen
Yep.
or your younger fishermen, which would be the smaller subgroup of your commercial lobstering fleet in the region.
Yep, we've got a lot of good little like individual trawls on there, but I want us to add as much as we can, so we still have time as I'm starting to digitize. I'd like to try and wrap up data collection by the end of October if we can, just so that I have time to make sure we've got like a good final draft for everybody to look at. And then we can tweak that if we want to. If we're, once it's all in its digital version, we can look at it and decide, like, do we still have gaps? Do we need to move things a little bit?
So are we gonna try to decide on a hard date to close the data that we're putting in now?
I mean, I don't want to cut people off if there's people that are away or, if there's some reason they can't participate in October, then we'll certainly take more data. But I'd like us to try and shoot for wrapping up so I have enough time to make sure I've got it all digitized and then we can all look at it and take our time and make sure we're happy with it. And then do maybe like a public meeting and have, we can do a presentation for what we've done. And then we might collect a few more people at that point that are like, oh, well, you didn't ask me, then happy to have them add in. I can add anyone in at any point in time. I just feel like if we don't lean towards a suggested cutoff date, it's just going to drag on. And I'd still like to shoot for having this map ready to go onto the town warrant, so.
I think we're missing a bunch of information to the north.
Yeah.
We have a lot of good stuff to the south where they're tending to fish more, but
Yep.
the conflicts of aquaculture are gonna happen to the north.
Yeah, I agree.
So
like
my
up
opinion,
in,
I could be wrong, but I
in
think
Harpswell Sound, like
further up you go.
Colby
Yeah.
filled in a little more with the scalloping up there, and then we've got some more lobster trawls kind of scattered throughout there, but I know there's more stuff, and I know the coffins fish up inside, and there's got to be more stuff that we can put in there, so.
And I think once Matt brings in the pokey fishing.
Yeah, I haven't heard yet how he's doing with that, and I'll ask him before I do it, but I don't mind nudging DMR and just being like, hey, guys, we got a project, we're trying to wrap it up. Like, I don't need it looked over. It can be considered like draft data. I know they get picky about not wanting to release something unless it's all reviewed, but we literally just, if they've got GPS points or Latin long or however they did it, we can project it onto the maps without them having to do anything else to it, so.
Considering how lengthy of a process this is going to be, would it be quicker just for us to immediately, like any proposal within Harpswell's waters comes in front of the committee,
Yeah,
that's the way it should be until this right here is taken care of. There's a lot of variables,
Yeah. Well-
so,
Harbor Waterfront get it, you get it,
yeah.
and,
We get the LPAs, we don't get the leases.
We'll get the leases once we know about them, but
Yeah, so they then,
know until
it is,
like well
yeah.
after the fact.
Presenting that to Harpswell is not part of the process. We find out after the fact.
David, can you repeat what you said? I'm not clear.
Considering the length of this process and the direction we're going, would it be quicker for us to vote on any proposal set forth has to come before Harpswell? If it's in Harpswell's waters, whether it's regardless of what aquaculture proposal it is, it has to be put in front of the town of Harpswell.
How did you guys
Ultimately.
get permission to do the LPAs? Like, what was that mechanism? You know what I mean?
It had everything to do with depth.
No, but I mean, I don't think other towns review LPAs, do
So
they?
we changed the ordinance so that the harbor committee can assist the harbor master in review of.
So it's tied to the harbor master review
Yes.
piece
So they can assist the harbor master in the review of,
of LPAs.
and that's
Okay.
how we,
But I'm sorry. It's also state harbor masters review LPAs.
right, but
But
we,
in Harpswell, you added,
we wanted to give a broader focus to the community, because they felt like they weren't being part of the process. So it was a good way to say, okay, let the committee weigh in and give their opinion to the harbor master to kind of guide how we should.
So functionally, we didn't change the state format of how they do it. You guys just added a piece at your local level that you could expand on. And is there a way to do that for standard leases and experimental leases? What's the flow chart for those, Paul? Do you know off the top of your head?
See, the problem is they're coming, like we've talked about before, like they should come to the town first. That
Right.
way the applicant doesn't waste all their time and money submitting something that the town has an issue with.
Right. Do you see a way we can, do what David wants to do, like, in a similar mechanism to what we did with LPAs? Or is the other system, like, different enough so that we don't have a tool to get in there unless we get to the state.
I don't think we have a tool unless it's word of mouth, just people would just learn that, hey, maybe I should go to the town of Harpswell first before. But with LPAs, they have to get the harbor master signature before
Right.
they can move forward.
I thought depth dictated whether they had to inform us or, I thought it all
For
was,
marine resources.
yeah,
The
5,
Shellfish Committee.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's 5 feet or less.
Yes.
so, yeah. I think that should be all of Harpswell's waters.
Who has to inform if it's with the depth?
The applicant,
Of aquaculture?
yeah, they have to go through prior, that's part of the process, correct?
So it has to go to the Shellfish Committee if I think it's, is it
Yeah.
5 feet or
I
less?
think so. That was kind of a newer thing.
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
For LPAs. I don't think leases. do
Still,
they?
yeah.
If it's within that 5 foot, I had to do for Wilson's,
Right, true.
yeah.
I mean, would the select board be in support of sending a letter to the state asking we would like to have any leases come to the town committees before
Oh,
we
yeah.
go forward?
I mean, in theory, aren't they supposed to have, is this would be preempting the scoping session? Is that what you're saying?
We would be part of the scoping session.
We should
Which it
be
could
anyway,
be,
right? The
yeah.
town is the functionally,
Yeah.
like the harbor
True,
master and the
right.
town is the scoping session body, so we can just decide to invite committee members to the
Yeah,
scoping
could do
session.
that.
That would be a simple way to do it,
Yep.
to start with, anyway.
I mean, it's supposed to, but my scoping session was held in Brunswick, so.
Yeah.
Was your lease in Brunswick?
No, it's Harpswell,
That's crazy.
yeah.
That seems sketchy.
It all seems sketchy.
Does every lease applicant get a scoping session? They do.
I think
Yes.
so.
But the public hearing is if it was 5, now 20 people request it
For experimental.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Standards automatic.
Yep.
for,
Automatic
public
public
hearing.
hearing, regardless.
Yeah.
okay.
no, because this process is gonna take us some time, especially if we're gonna bring this before public town meeting and, you know, have another workshop on it, you know, and I'm just curious how many proposals are in DMR's process since we decided not to hold a moratorium on all proposals compared to right now. That's, you know,
We wouldn't have known anyway, would we? Even if we did the moratorium.
Uh-huh.
DMR is forthcoming with it.
yeah,
I think we asked this, you know, we asked the select board to send a letter to the department saying, we're working on this process, we're trying to map out the fishing grounds, but in the meantime, we would really like to be included in on, you know, have these applicants come to the town first, or, you know, please let them know, or, you know, can you please let them know that we'd like to talk to them first before they go too far along? I mean, I'm not sure.
It doesn't hurt to send that, but I can see
Yeah, but
Amanda
it's more
Ellis's face
proactive.
right now going, if it's not in statute, we're not doing it. I can see, that's how they are up there.
But it's something more than just like,
Yeah.
no, we have to do
It's not,
something.
it's not gonna hurt.
Yeah.
And it's more from the proactive, like, we're actively trying to do something that no other town is doing.
Right, we have an
Which is
aquaculture
including-
working group, so,
Fishermen, the public, in this process, but
Yeah.
it's taking a little longer than we thought. We're trying to
Yeah.
get more participation, more information. But in the meantime, the moratorium is not gonna work, they're not gonna support that.
no,
But a letter that says, we are doing this process, we're getting momentum.
yeah,
So asking to be informed
yeah. Be-
if anybody's applying.
Be part of that deciding factor.
Even if they just said, please go talk to the harbor master
Yeah,
about it.
exactly.
And then Paul's gonna say, hey, you should really come to the meeting, it's not a formal
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
Just come talk to the committee.
Yeah,
Yep.
You know?
Should we make a motion here on the board to have that letter written up?
yeah,
And then have, you know, a little talk on what we would do after the fact versus one way or the other? I mean, the worst thing they're gonna tell us is no, which is gonna force our hands in only one of two directions.
it's,
It's either a temperate, you know, we can do a temperate closure,
yeah,
or until we get this here settled with the mapping. Because we're gonna need to address something with data, are we not?
You can't do a closure.
Right, DMR won't support
They
it.
won't recognize
Partial
it.
moratorium?
No.
They won't recognize it,
Because it's state law.
They'll just move on without the town's input.
right.
Yeah.
these other towns that have moratoriums, do you know if there's anything in place right now? I mean, there's,
They have them like at their local level, they've decided that that's what they want, but the state is not recognizing that. They're continuing the process, ignoring that. So I think it's just that the towns that have moratoriums don't have a whole lot of aquaculture applications going on there.
yeah,
What
So-
town has the oldest moratorium?
Waldeboro's the only one.
Yeah, but it was only for
No.
6 months or something.
Yeah.
And I have found that any applicant that comes to our committees, if we say, hey, that's not a great spot, this is a great spot, they're like, that's awesome information, I'm glad I
Yeah.
have it. I think being
Yeah.
proactive about this and getting the word out, just in the short term, I think people, if they're gonna invest thousands of dollars into a farm, they're gonna wanna make sure they're in a good spot, one.
Yeah.
And two, that they're gonna work with the locals and stuff. I mean, we are representing the locals. We want more input, but I think trying to get a positivity to this thing and trying to get, we're not trying to stop anything, we just wanna know.
No, I just like, we welcome you with open arms, but at the same time, we're gonna honor this and we're gonna honor that. We have to. So,
Well, just going through DMR's list of pending applications, there's 6 in Harpswell that are pending, and there's 0 in Waldeboro.
Right, so the moratorium hasn't been tested,
Right.
but it's not gonna work.
Waldeboro doesn't have
I'll
enough
tell you,
water.
it's not gonna
No,
work.
they-
Yeah.
They don't care.
No.
it won't work until a municipality takes DMR to court. And then,
Or we work on state law.
yeah.
I mean, I think along with a letter, I think, to me, the best strategy has been to sit down and talk. And I think you tried and they declined to meet.
Yeah.
Who, the state?
Initially, and then the second time around, Cole said that they'd be willing to, but since the select board wasn't fully prepared, we kind of tabled it. So
Yeah.
it's, because of this group was being formed.
Right. So I think that would be a very proactive thing to do, and particularly Allison Hepler, Representative Hepler, couldn't be here today, but if she's interested and we have her there, whoever's meeting with her, it makes a difference to have a serving legislator.
Would she co-sign the letter?
I don't know, and she's not from Harpswell, so,
She's the chair, still the chair of the Marine Resource Committee though, correct?
right?
They
I
would
mean,
have
we
to
can
listen
ask
to her.
her.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, which.
We're not asking for anything other than just like.
Some
talk to us.
communication,
Just
yeah.
just give us a call.
Well, that's the whole idea of the committee is to
Yeah, but you guys need to keep in mind, if you get on DMR's aquaculture site and you get on their aquaculture map, there's no identification of existing fisheries. You got a wide open map there. All their labeling and showing you is pending and existing leases. There's nothing on there on wild fisheries. That's false, misinterpretation. Like, it's like, how much time you gonna spend pursuing this particular area that you want a proposal in to find out, oh my God, like, it makes no sense. It makes their aquaculture web map makes 0 sense, because they have a criteria list. That criteria should be highlighted on that map to avoid spending any time on it, like in an area that you're not gonna end up with.
I think it's probably a resource issue for them.
It's ridiculous.
Like, I think I agree, they should have it,
Well,
but
I mean, they've got a criteria list. They don't honor it. They're honoring the criteria list is what fisherman's gonna find out it's happening and spend the time to get involved to prevent it from happening. That's the only way they honor their existing fisheries criteria.
Well, theoretically, it's one of the criteria.
Yeah, that's why we're here, though.
We have
'cause they
found
don't-
on many of these applications, they're not
No, they're
getting the
not.
information. They're going out there in February and taking photos of a
No
fishing ground that's not,
buoys.
They're
and
leaving
they
it
just
up.
don't know, but I mean, that's why I'm saying, if we
They're-
could get them.
Yeah.
Everyone that has come, there was
Yeah.
a group that had 16 little wellboat, and they were like, oh, we had no idea.
Yeah.
And I don't know if
I mean,
that's truthful or not, but they were like,
Yeah.
okay, we'll put the brakes on. Like, I think that people in general would want to like work with the town.
Yeah, and considering, like, they're leaving it up to this applicant to identify the surrounding fisheries, when a lot of their existing fisheries already entails, like, coordinates, it entails all that, like, correct me if I'm wrong,
I was just gonna
like,
say, I got the information finally yesterday from DMR on boogies and lobster landings. I forwarded it to you, Paul,
oh, Paul.
instead of the group, because I figured, all right, I'm not real good with email.
They actually have the information.
yeah.
Yeah, so they
Can you
have
send that
all
to
the
us?
information.
You have to mark where you put your gear, right?
Right.
Yeah, so they have the information.
Yeah,
And the same with the pokey fishermen, they have to mark the coordinate when they caught the fish.
Right.
But the problem they run into, and what they gave me was like a heat map, because there's confidentiality issues, you have to have it in groups of 3 or more, to release it.
Wait, like 3 net sets within like a certain area, or like, what do you mean exactly?
It has to be in a regional management area.
What is how big is
So
a
it's like when
regional?
we're using for proposals for areas where we don't have any funding to get detailed information, I think habitat offshore, federal waters for
Yeah.
offshore wind development, you can't, because you don't ask Coca-Cola how to make Coca-Cola, because each private individual is a private equity business in itself. So what we do is, if you three are in the same management area, what I can do, I can't get your specific data, but what I can do is, like they said, the heat source revenue chart, your VTRs are based on big data in a region that's broad. So when I put that heat mark on there, if I call the three of you, technically, it's a toss-up when I look at it, or I pass it out to the public. They're never gonna know that significant detail, it's just a regional idea. Because you can't go beyond the state of the law of taking people's personal data. That's why half the people that we ask in the public about these regional areas and shore, you know, by legal right, they technically don't have to tell us anything. That's why there are also a lot of these lobstering outfits challenging the markers. I mean, you can argue that both ways. We get significant data for coexistence research that, you know, we can verify versus, you know, problem is in the fisheries, it's anecdotal information until we do so, which is kind of bad because federally, even a logbook on any documented vessel federally, whether it be statewide, is considered to be a legal terminology document that's held by legal law. So it's one of those, who has the funding to challenge? It's very challengeable, it's just gonna cost a lot of money.
Hey, Matt, those files didn't come through. I just realized. I tried forwarding it to
Okay.
everybody.
I'll figure.
Are they
out
just really
maybe
big or
something
something?
after Or something. But I mean, just looking at them, they give me the heat map for statistical area 513, which encompasses Harpswell and stuff, so I got a lot more other than Harpswell. But the most fished area is that square we have mapped out right there. That 10-minute square, like around Harpswell, is dark red for lobstering and pokeing. Like that's where the most activity.
Why wouldn't they have that on their aquaculture?
Because that slows down the money that they get from aquaculture.
Why even
They don't
have,
get any money from pokey fishermen or lobstermen.
I mean, why even have a criteria list if, the only reason why we're doing what we're doing right now, because they don't honor it. I've seen it like 8 different times, and it's gonna continue, so.
Well, I think that was the premise why we did this, was
Yeah.
for us to get one step ahead of
Yep.
the state and create a matrix for how we would make these decisions in the future forecast while being able to update the system periodically.
And I suspect other coastal towns will probably like to do the same thing.
I imagine they would adopt a lot of the same premise and, you know, as being a starting point, you know, there's always room for tweaking.
Yeah.
As long as we leave that door open.
Yep.
But
And
I
it-
think we still need to be moving down the road.
Yeah.
How do we make these decisions?
That was Dana Morris's point from Sea Grant, that
Yeah.
this process was one other towns might want to do.
Yep. Ours is the most complicated. There's no other coastal town that's gonna have this much of a complicated array of fisheries. So if we can master this and put out something that works, it
Hey,
should be.
Paul, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
The Harbor Masters Association, your communication with them, are they obviously challenged with the same things we're challenged with here? Like, would they support a process where an applicant should come to the town first? I mean, do you think they would
Yeah.
support that?
Yep, so I'm,
Oh, yeah.
I'm also on the board of directors for the association, and we have these conversations quite
So,
frequently.
do you think you could approach that board and have them write a memo to Pat and say, hey, can you put an executive order in place to, you know, have these applicants go to the towns first? I mean, Pat has some power here.
We can
He's the
write it, I
commissioner.
just think they're gonna, they're gonna say, they're gonna
but-
say if it's not in regulations or statute, they're not gonna, they're so, like, when you go to their hearings, they're so black and white. They read from a script, and they don't deviate from that whatsoever. It's, we can ask,
Be having
sure.
talks with the commissioner next week anyways. I'd be happy to put a bug in his ear about coming here, or sending one of the staffers, maybe
Yeah.
Meredith, could come down in this place. But I think it'd be worth us, you know.
Yeah.
It'd be easier to have him sit here and give him our oral arguments than try to dictate what we're trying to
Yep.
futurely outcome. I just don't think we can get it done in 1,000 words.
Right.
I think it'd be beneficial. I mean, I'd be happy on behalf of NEFSA, you know, to do that little bridge work right there. But I think adopting this and maybe getting Maine Sea Grant, you know, in recognition of what he's already pre-heard here, having a coalition
idea.
letter, I think they'd be more liable to recognize it and, you know, put the right foot forward. Just
Allison has something.
This is kind of a
Oh,
little bit why
Would you slide up to the mic?
thank you. This is a little bit why I'm here. So I started looking on the website, and there's nothing on there to, anything that you guys have done, just to say that you guys started in May. And that was kind of when I left this, when you guys formed, and I wanted to see, one, what you guys have been doing, and two, I get those emails about the leases, probably because I'm a wharf owner. And that's why I'm here, is because I'm very concerned, one, with what we sort of talked about from the beginning when we wanted to form this group, was that we were worried about how many farms, that it was growing too fast, and that we wanted to look at it. And then we're here today, and I don't have any questions answered after all these months of what's going on here. And it seems to me, definitely you would always write a letter to DMR, whether you think they're gonna say no or not. Nothing is impossible. We just had a huge court case we won that we said was gonna be impossible, and it was won. So it's very disheartening to hear people that are working for you say that things are impossible. Just think about your wording when you're saying stuff. You can go where you want to go if you have that vision. Do we know how many farms are here? Do we have a number?
I can get it, there's a Viewshed did a GIS map of all the farms within Harpswell. If you give me a minute, I can get it.
So this is some of the stuff that I'm like, if I want to go on the website and I want to see what this committee's doing, is like, I want to see some of the information, so when I come, I can talk about these things and be a little more caught up. And I think that if you're going to write a letter to DMR, and you've done this before, I guess, is that you need to show why it is so important, and you need to show growth. Where is the density of these farms? Is it mostly in our Harpswell area? Is the growth been like 75% since 2020? Do we know that? Do we have a growth chart to show us how these farms, like, these are the concerns I thought that we were talking about, is the growth of this. And then we're working on maps, which is great, but it's slow. I mean, we're almost in November, and you guys started in May, and you're still not done the maps.
Yeah.
And like David, to, back up what he's saying, is that this is gonna take forever, and maybe you meant to say just new leases and not all leases. I don't understand why the state couldn't agree to that if you're showing a growth that seems worrisome. I mean, we're supposed to be managing our natural resources. Lobstering has to be managed, every fishery has to be managed, and this one isn't, and that's a problem. So I just want to see a little bit more information, that you're sharing with the town. If I can't come to these meetings, I want to be able to, I mean, I've said it before, the website is a little bit thick to get into, but no, that was why I'm here. I want us to work a little faster. I know how state and town and all this stuff, I get it, I've been there, but I mean, where's the work besides these maps? Like, we got to get all these questions answered, and get DMR to work with us in any way that it takes. And if you have to get legal to do it, then get legal to do it. That's why we have a legal team that works for us. There's ways around getting things done, especially when it comes to natural resources. Thank you.
Thanks.
There's 8 standard LPAs, 101, or 8 standard, and 101 experimental. They encompass 47 acres, and 90% of them are where there's restricted currents.
How many?
I would love to see
Really?
that on your committee.
Just looking at,
Yeah, output.
knowing what I know.
How many acres, Matt?
Wow.
Just shy of 47, 46.49.
That's why I try to explain to you that it don't take an abundance of aquaculture. It's all about location and positioning in every body of water. And that constricted current is key. And intelligent aquaculturists know this. It's a tool that they use. And I'm sorry, but we can beat around the bush all we want. We gotta grow some balls and either set a moratorium, or any proposal from here has to come in front of the town. What do we have, 3 different committees that are of concern when it comes to a proposal
Yeah.
before Harpswell? I'm sorry, but like, yeah, what are we rolling on, 5 months, 4 or 5 months now? These maps don't look no different than the ones that we did before we even started.
No, but it's the latest, and next steps, I'm sure we're gonna hit restricted currents. I know you've been waiting.
Yeah, and that's so easy.
Yeah.
Just look
But I
at the
mean,
depth
we are
chart.
all of us are responsible for this, so
Yeah.
you and Jerry and Matt and myself, all of us are responsible for the timeline here. It isn't Kevin, it isn't Darcy, it's like,
Yeah.
we all have had equal responsibility to get this done.
Yeah,
So as a group, we have not, I've been saying, we need to start doing something, whether it's mapping, we didn't want to map, now we want to map. But we need to be moving forward. The moratorium, we tried that did not work.
no,
We have to do something that's going to get some things to move forward, but all of us are responsible for getting something done.
Well, and I would respond, I know it's frustrating, it's slow, but we are working. No other town is doing this.
yeah.
And I'm proud of what we're doing. I appreciate the other day, 2 times ago, Billy, you said, we got to act. So we're acting. I think a letter should go to the state. I think you want, if we had a meeting, it'll be documented, but a letter is documentation
Yeah.
of what you're doing. And I think, you can say the state, you don't want to hear no, but there are laws. And unless the laws are changed, they are restricted by what they can do. But that doesn't mean we can't work on it.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, but their map contradicts their criteria list. That's false representation. For anyone coming into this field and wants to pursue, look at the time it's wasted for people, look at the time it's wasted for applicants.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Just to get the ball moving here in the right direction. We're all agreeing we're working, trying to move forward, but unless we have a plan, a course, we're just a boat on Waverly doing circles in the water. So do we make a motion today to draft this letter with the town and with this committee, and maybe ask the other committee to sign on too, because these are the same issues that we're all, that's why we created this one. To get them to sign on, we can reach out to Pat, the DMR, and even throw a letter over towards Sebastian Bell with the Aquaculturists too, for their council to come down here for the next meeting. But in the meantime, regardless if they say yes or no, we couldn't challenge it until they give us an answer anyways. So there's no point in threatening over something they haven't said yet. So the first step would be to write the letter, wait for a response, and then move adequately from there.
The letter would be a description of what we have going on right now, included in that,
Exactly. I think exposing that we're redoing the maps, rezoning the area that's been 12 to 13 years out anyways, and we're gonna have, things, well, we can set other guidelines later saying that, from a precedence, once we adopt this, that every 6 months to a year, any new knowledge on the maps gets reiterated, you know what I mean, and any kind of significant scientific challenges that are on research peer reviewed that come before us, we can reanalyze.
I don't see how they can deny, contest anything, considering, he can pull up information that you are required in these existing fisheries to document and catalog where you're.
Well, challenging statewide legally, state of Maine lobster licenses, I mean, we don't just hand out lobster licenses now, do we? We have waiting lists. So, same thing with trawling fleets and everybody else, there's only certain access points to everything. Right now, this is a free-for-all.
Yeah.
Which is the reason why all these committees are having a fret. I'm not saying no, I'm taking the middle ground road approach, I have no stake in the game one way or the other anymore. I go, this is just merely of right and wrong. But without these adopted guidelines that we're already, honestly, all of us admitted today, in one way or the other, saying what the state is proposing, it's not adequate for what we're asking. So this is why the town and this committee board needs to come up with a matrix decision on how we would use those, and adopting, current structures while adopting pre-existing there. This is where we need to start talking about creating a matrix of how our decision levels and overlaps versus time of the year versus what we could accept and what we cannot accept. And that way we'll have something to address to the town or in some private engagements before we bring this to the town. So any criticism could be brought then, not after the fact, and we kick the can further down the road.
I think Jerry hit the nail on the head. I think we've really got to start working on the matrices. I mean, we've done the mapping a bunch. We have it mapped out pretty well at this point. We need to start making decisions like, all right, we know this area has restricted currents, pogie fishing, lobster, and scalloping, so that's clearly not a good place for aquaculture. You know, like, we can come up with no restricted currents, no area where there's already currently 3 fisheries, for example, taking place, you know, there's simple stuff like that, you know, that we could be doing while we're drafting a letter, you know. And as the state acknowledges what we already have now for waterfront classification, don't they? So like if it's a type 3, that's the harbors and stuff,
Yeah.
correct?
I
So,
think,
I mean,
yeah.
we can basically do the same type of thing with what we have, just, you know, and make more type 3 waters where there's a lot of current fishing activity or restricted currents. You know, but if the state's already acknowledging that's okay and listening to us on that, let's just add to that.
Right.
Well, it's because it was pro. What we mapped and identified was pro aquaculture. Now we're gonna kind of be doing the opposite, so we're gonna see just how.
Well, there'll still be type 1 waters.
Yeah, I wouldn't
You know,
say
where
it's doing the
aquaculture would
opposite.
work,
We're
but I
just,
think
it's
we
the
just
reality.
Expand the type 3.
You know,
to encompass
Yeah.
some of these areas where there's large fishing activity or restricted currents.
It's kind of like pulling the curtain back and helping people to realize it is not an open field ready for aquaculture everywhere. There's already a lot of stuff already occupying the space, and they just need to see where it is.
Get on their web map,
Yeah.
and you're looking at all this.
It is,
now.
but essentially, we are doing the job that they wish maybe that they could have done to add that data to their map. It's a resource heavy, look at how much time it's taken us to just, we're local and we know this stuff, and it's taken a while to get all this stuff mapped and, you know.
As far as existing fisheries, they've got it documented, so.
So do we want to make a motion on when we close the date for the maps for now, and then address when we start talks on the matrix decision on how we start to do the overlaps while we're still marking?
I don't think I want to necessarily make a hard close date on the maps. I'll get them pulled together. We can put the word out that like, hey, we'd like to get input by the end of October, but I don't want anyone to feel like they're getting cut out and didn't have a
Yeah, that's why I was just
chance.
saying, if we have a projected date to give them.
Yeah.
That might incentivize them to move ahead faster, but to say that I just don't want to get caught up kicking the can down the road any more than we have to.
Yeah.
Because these leases, right, until we get the state to recognize what we're doing here, the can's still moving.
Yeah.
Darcy, how long does it take for you to get all that stuff, the shape files built and all that, like?
I started doing them once we got this map scanned in, so I would say my farm has slowed down enough so that I could sit down and put some serious hours into this. If I had, I could have all of this digitized in a week.
So before our next meeting, we could have.
Yes.
the shape
Whatever
file.
I have had into my hands by the next meeting. I have to see what the Pogie stuff looks like. I don't understand what that format is, but everything, I can give you like a digitized map to review at our next meeting.
Does the town have a socioeconomic impact based on fisheries, a database here in town?
No.
No? Would that be something maybe reach out to Island Institute or Maine Sea Grant to see what they have?
Yep.
Because it'd be nice to get a regional historical socioeconomic impact for, you know, the values of each fisheries, which should be added into the overall.
I think MCFA has some stuff in there too.
Just for Harpswell, or?
I would say just for the region that we're
Yeah, we know-
mapping in our zone.
Yeah, well, we know the landings, but.
Exactly, but if we're proposing this as a town, I mean, not to say the other towns can't adopt what we're doing, but we can't be overreaching our bounds. I mean, we're trying to set a precedent, I believe, right? I just don't want to be stepping on toes that, you know, that could backlash us on later on, you know.
So that's the kind of information statewide, but we don't have
I think
regional.
statewide, finding what we're doing for harvesters, for shellfish in this regional area, finding out what the cost is versus scallops versus harvest versus aquaculture, seaweed value, I think lobster value for our region. I know this area alone, what, third largest landings in the state. So, you know, that's a big economic driver, the third largest industry. So that's, you know, you don't step on those toes. Then after that, we put it on we can, at least if we have it in front of us, we can put it on a sheet and actually start having a real conversation, basis overlaps, time and effort.
We need to draft something with that information for sure.
That's what I'm thinking, maybe, even if we just did 5 pads, large pads, each fishery on there, find a, you know, interconnected web of, you know, the importance of an area versus the economic value I mean, there's no point in putting something you're making $50 in when the town makes $300. And these ones have been for so many years prior to this. You know, that's what comes back into the current question, whether or not the resource is gonna be impacted, which is a hard one to say because we've never really looked. So, you know, you're trading in light waters and legal battles, that means, well, the greater the unknown, greater the restriction. Federally, that's how the Magnuson works. During a conservation law, I think it's part of National Standard 8.
So I don't know, it seems like that should exist somewhere, but
It
No.
does, but state and federal, it's trumped, and since we're a versatile region where some of our guys have federal and state permit, we need to take that into consideration of both parts because they're managed regionally and timely in different fashions, and those are all subject to change. So again, whatever we adopt has to be subject to be able to change too, if that is a deciding factor we work on after we've decided we have a matrix. But what information is, my guess, my question out to the board is, what question do you guys think would be beneficial for us to have for the next meeting so we can have that talk and address the matrix level? Because without that, we're just guessing. And if we need to find that data beforehand, or otherwise, we're just literally, you know, ship at sea doing circles here. And I can hear from the frustration in public comment today is, where are we going? Well, we don't even know where we are, so how do we know where we're going?
I think it's also important to recognize we kind of have two parallel tracks that we're working on. The mapping and all of this stuff is strictly just to give some clarity to the identified existing criteria that DMR uses, which is commercial fishing. So all of our effort going into this mapping stuff is so that we can provide better, clear, bright line boundaries for where there would be an impact on commercial fishing that already exists in their process. So that's one project that we're doing. We're trying to improve our way to kind of live happily within the existing structure, but also clearly, there's a bunch of stuff that could be improved upon and fixed and added to or tweaked or modified, and that's kind of a separate track. So I just think we need to make sure that we're clear that we've got these two basically major projects both moving ahead at the same time. One is just the clarifying the commercial fishing stuff that's already one of their criteria so that there's no question about them, you know, does it interfere or not? Well, when we have it all mapped out and the town has codified it, it's very clear, it's black and white at that point. But then the other issue is adding in new criteria like restricted currents and the impacts that, you know, placing too much stuff in an area will have on things, or these other kind of things that aren't criteria, they're not a legal step in the ladder that they're using to do their work, but it should be.
We're just letting them know that we're recognizing that it's an impediment, which dictates their criteria, impediment of navigation, impediment of riparians, egress and ingress. That should fall right in suit with it.
So is that should be part of the proposal letter that we put out?
Yeah.
It's stating these facts of what the whole premise of what it is we're trying to accomplish here. And then, like I said, you can't argue it one way or the other until we have an answer back. I mean, if it comes down to state policy and everything else, well, they'd have to say no before we can start that venture. And if they say yes, well, even better for us, we just move faster. So should we just make a motion to add that into a letter?
Yeah.
And then we'll maybe reach out to Island Institute, Maine Sea Grant, attach them to the letter too about existing information, and we can also reach out to MCFA, or if Abby, if you wouldn't mind, liaisoning on that one.
See if we have an association.
Yeah, I know Monique has quite a bit of stuff. I don't know if it was up to date to 23, but I think the best you're gonna get is probably to the 22 date anyways, because I think a lot of the
Send her an
23.
email right after this meeting and see if we got anything.
Yeah.
I wonder if MCOG would have, Maine Coast Council of Governments. I'll ask.
Yeah.
So is that something we should make a motion?
I make a motion that we read the letter. How's that?
Second it.
All in favor?
We'll get
It's official.
we'll get what's in it out of your minutes.
Yeah,
So now we know we're gonna write a letter, who's gonna write the letter?
Oh, Paul.
Yep.
yeah.
Sorry, Paul.
So we'll get the draft to the select board, we'll obviously copy the committee, the work group.
Yeah,
So if there's information that we think should be on it, should we send you an email with that information? I mean, if Dave has a lot of stuff he wants to say, so we don't really, I think we should get whatever he thinks should be in the letter, in the letter.
So send it to me, and then we'll compile everything, put it in. So why don't we do this? So then I'll send a draft to the committee first. And if you have additions, subtractions, send it back to me. And then once we, just don't have a meeting through email, just send it to me directly. We'll correct it, and then once the committee, I don't have any more feedback, I'll submit it to the select board.
there you go.
Yep.
And maybe let us know when it's going to the select board, so we can show up.
What are we asking, like the ability to deny proposals within a constricted current, within what we deem as an existing fishery? Is that what you're gonna?
I guess what we're asking for them is to recognize a pause while we develop a town matrix on
Yeah.
how we develop our economic and socioeconomic impacts to the viability and the longevity of our
Right.
resources.
We don't want to ask for a denial. They won't let us do that anyway, but phrasing it the way Jerry did.
Yeah,
I was thinking smaller, to be notified of any applications.
Maybe we can have that as our back down position.
I think that's asking a lot, but I think it'd be great to get the rest.
I mean, I'd look at it
That's
this
how you-
way, whatever they come back with is an opportunity, one way or the
But we're not
other.
asking for the information, we're saying because of all this information, we need to be included in the process, like,
Yeah.
it's like, all this is going on, we recognize that this process is not, recognized in the constricted currents, all the stuff that you wanna say.
And
So
while-
we want to be notified, we want to have public input on this stuff before it gets too far along.
So you want a recommendation for a pause while the work group,
A pause on future leases from, let's say, staying point today.
yeah.
Just not saying no, but saying until we figured out this matrix
Right.
and what the town deems best through its fisheries, through, whatever matrix we decide, through a socioeconomic, coexistence work that we can come up with between now, and like I said, we set a hard date. But before we can set any of that, we need to finish up the maps, and we need to have that talk amongst this group in this town of how we decide those factors. And I think finding that data with the socioeconomic impacts for this region is gonna be a good first step, it's like, well, we don't wanna just shoot our own selves in the foot here. And that's kind of what we're saying, and Dave's point is more of an environmental factor that's not being recognized by the DMR at this point. Maybe that's something we can use as a progressive lead into in the note, in the letter, saying this is our rationale behind our standpoint, and using these significant points that we put up to the board as little icons. It's, we say this because this is a direct impact that could have long-term effects, not only the socioeconomic, but the community standards of living too. And that's something they would have to end up recognizing. If they don't recognize it, well, then it gives us legal premises to go one way or the other, and that's something that the town would have to decide.
and so are we including the, also being notified, or are you using that as a rebuttal?
I think we should ask for everything, I think we should always be I mean, in my opinion, let's see the letter, but I mean,
I mean, the trick is to get them in the chair.
They're
Once
not
in the
gonna
chair,
pause it. I
We go
mean,
from there.
Yeah.
And if they don't go to the chair, well, that's an answer in itself, and that gives us other opportunities and other avenues we'll have to address, but
I think,
trying to have that matrix now, we're just guessing.
I mean, we have at least, this is talking off the top of my head, but of the LPAs that have, just the LPAs that have come through the committee, our committee this year, I read the applications and it says, is there any impact on commercial fishing? And I would say 95% of them say none. I mean, you could just copy 50 of those things and say,
Yeah.
we're not, the process, we're working within the process of, your application asks for the information, but you're not getting the information. They're not, because they don't know where to go for it. Now, we're trying to do all that work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, just read the application, it says no impact. It's like, no, there is.
I think the
There's some
reason they
impact.
say that is because they know if they say yes, it gets denied.
Well, I know,
Well,
but
they
I
don't have
mean,
the funding to go after it anyways, even if you said yes.
but
That's half
isn't
the
that
problem.
what this is about?
right, yeah.
Yeah.
That's why we're asking for a pause or a notification, because like, it's not working. And then tell Pat about it, and the system's really broken, like, get on board with us.
I think these are dramatically different or level of ask. One is let us know so that we can talk to people about what the problems are, like you do with LPAs. I think that's one thing. The other is, don't put any leases through till we finish what we're doing. I think we could get a yes on this, and I think a no on that, but we don't know till we ask. But I'm a little uncomfortable saying pause because they don't have to.
Well, they don't have to regardless either way, which
No,
is
they
why
don't
we
have
make,
to.
it's like, well, you ask for a mile and you get an inch. It's generally how it works. You know,
Right.
It's why Congress goes for a big number, and by the time everybody nip, 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 it's a small number. It's the same thing, but if we don't make the premise and make the argument of the overall ask for the premise for what we're doing, then are we really doing what we're saying?
And I think
That's
if-
that's my feeling. I mean, I'm not trying to be the bullhorn here, but the whole premise behind this committee and the arguments that were brought up at town council meetings is we already see it, there's a significant worry for the longevity. And we are recognizing that the state does not recognize these on their roadmap to procuring aquaculture sites. And now as we're procuring more time and effort in our town, we're all here on free time, doing what the state should have already done before we started procuring leases just to hand freely.
Yeah.
And this is our town saying,
Wait a minute.
just tap the brakes.
I think
We're not
if-
saying no, just tap the brakes.
I
And
think
can
if
you
we-
clarify if you're saying new or all leases, because I think that could be a wall too, I mean.
Well, I
not
don't think we
saying
have to
anybody
ask
that's-
it until they come back with an answer first, because if they don't show up, we're not gonna have the talk anyways. So if we don't put it in the initial ask in the letter of where our premise of what our standpoint is, I mean, regardless whether it's a yes or a no, at least that lets us know we're not wasting our time.
I'm assuming we're talking letter and at the same time trying to set up a conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe that's 2 letters?
Well, I think you could, I mean, I'm asking, in the letter, you could say we request,
Yeah, a letter that leads to an
Face-to-face.
invitation to
Yeah.
a,
Yeah.
I think you could do it perfectly. You could make the ask for the pause and say, if you don't want to pause, can you at least come talk to us and see the work we've been doing, you know, so you understand why we're asking for the pause. Kind of give them an out, per se, you know? Because I kind of agree. I think they're going to say no to the
Yeah.
pause, even though I don't want them to. But if we give them an easy way to say no, like, all right, we'll say no, but we'll come talk to you about it. You know, they don't feel as bad that way.
I think that's a good tact, honestly. It's,
Draws them in.
yeah.
Right, that's all we're trying to do, draw
He's
them in.
famous too, I mean, he's been on the paper.
Right.
That's right. Nice pictures, too.
That was a fun way to tell the family to smoke cigarettes.
well, send,
It,
I think we all know about it.
They did.
it's mind blowing.
yeah,
They have,
letter.
you know, they have documented data on existing fisheries, but yet, where is it on that map? They're
Yeah.
gonna leave it up to an applicant to dictate that and try to push it through. That's,
Yeah, but even our own fisheries across the board, even federally, are starting to recognize that heads don't talk to each other. You know, that's half the problem. You know, each of these divisions all talk to their own division, and unless they've been made to come to the table, they won't do it. They don't have the funding to do it. It's not that they don't want to, it's just there's no procurement and funding to do it. That's kind of what the premise behind what we're doing, is doing what should have been done right from the get-go, but like anything else in life, you know, you play catch-up.
All right. Well, at this point, I think we know what the letters, I think we zeroed in on that. We have another group starting up in 3 minutes.
awesome. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Can
We got
I,
an IRA group of war folders.
to Allison's point about what's going on, or do the minutes
Oh.
get posted?
No.
So how do we make that happen?
Well, you should.
We'll ask Tina, we'll ask Tina to,
Do we have a
we-
section on the
We have somebody here that
website?
does.
It's under
it
all
now on
committees
Fridays, Mondays and Fridays.
Yep.
Should we put a JPEG on anything updated on our map?
Should I
On there?
Yeah, if you guys want, as soon as I start getting the digitized stuff ready to go, I can send it to you and you can have her post it. So
Maybe just
I'll
put a
call,
little
help
blog.
me get that
And then
information.
Jim
to you.
Babarski can get it more.
Yeah.
yeah,
we can provide a link to
They're doing
the
like-
GIS system.
I have
Well-
that link, if you want it, Darcy.
yeah, let's
GIS.
talk in the parking lot and get
Well,
that.
I'm here for the next committee.
Oh, dang, all right. Are you going to Cook's later?
Why?
You gonna adjourn?
I'd never go there.
There'll be a bunch of people down there.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second,
Third.
all right.